Good evening, everyone, on this Friday, the 31st of July, 2020. Remember to make all decisions solely based upon official forecast products and messages from the National Hurricane Center, the emergency management departments from your local jurisdiction, or from National Weather Service offices in your local area or state. We are now on day 2 of tracking now Hurricane Isaias, and it continues to roll across the central Bahamas, and Andros Island right here in the Bahamas is next in line to feel the most impacts. Also Paradise Island right here where Nassau is, the capital of the Bahamas. And as Isaias continues to work its way northwest, it may undergo a period of steady intensification before approaching the eastern Florida coast, specifically the southeastern Florida coast, by late tomorrow. So let's jump in here and see what is going on. You can see the infrared satellite imagery here. A lot of lightning activity going on in the eastern, if I can change the color here, in the eastern lobe here of Isaias's central dense overcast. You can see it looks a little bit more like a hurricane and more of a tropical system than it did last night. It's gotten a little more organized today. We'll check on the radar in a second, which shows that it now has a closed eye wall, which is usually indicative of that the storm is going to continue to gradually intensify as it continues to work over the warm open waters of the central Bahamas. You can see this explosion of convection, and the center of Isaias is actually right underneath this central dense overcast, this very big plume of really deep convection thunderstorm activity. Not a lot of lightning in there, but still that kind of helps guard the center of the storm and the eye and helps the storm to gradually intensify once again. So if we jump over to water vapor imagery, we can see that dry air is no longer a problem. We have this feature called transverse banding, which is when we have all of these bands of cirrus clouds and things that are perpendicular or 90 degrees to the center of the storm. So we have all of these bands out here. So it has kind of cut off itself from dry air. There's a little bit of dry air intrusion maybe on the southern side of the system, but the biggest story right now is the wind shear. And the wind shear is coming out of this direction and blowing the top basically off of Isaias, and it's causing it to struggle a little bit and intensify, which is certainly good news for interest in Andros Island, Paradise Island, and southeastern Florida, and eventually up the east coast as it continues to work that way. But that is, one of the factors that was limiting its intensification dropped, which was the major dry air intrusion, which was getting wrapped into the system, which means that the system has been allowed to intensify and reach hurricane status late last night and maintain it throughout today. So with that being said, I want to show you the radar image, which gives a much better idea of the image. It's always preferred to use radar when looking at hurricanes because it gives us an instantaneous picture of what's happening, and radars are based off of the ground, so we can see through the storm, laterally, and see the banding of rain and see what's going on. Versus satellite, you can only see the top. Even with infrared satellite, you can see down, yes, into the storm, but radar gives us the best imagery of an eye and the presence of any kind of eye wall features and things like that. So here is Florida, here is Andros Island, Paradise Island, Grand Bahama Key up here, and also Abaco Island. We can zoom in here, and down here near Exuma is where the storm currently is. You can see that throughout the day, as this radar lapses, the eye wall feature here is closed off now. So if we get to this point, that is certainly an indication of a strengthening hurricane and allows the hurricane to kind of build around itself, and it allows the eye wall to warm a little bit and allows the pressure to continue to drop, and it shows every indication of a strengthening hurricane, whether it be gradually or rapidly. We now wait and see overnight as it's in some very warm waters. Shear is marginal but still enough to keep the storm in check. As you can see, all the rain and precipitation on this side of Isaias' circulation, nothing on the southwest side due to that shear. So if some of this precipitation begins to wrap around and moistens up this area and this sector of the storm, more intensification is likely, because then the storm will be more well ventilated, more symmetrical. Again, if you see something, the prettier it looks in weather, I say air quotes when I say prettier, the more symmetrical, the more symmetry, usually the healthier and more organized the storm is. Right now, Isaias is kind of lopsided, which is certainly good news in terms of keeping the intensity in check, but with its path continuing to go toward the northwest over warm open water, and this tightening up of the eye wall feature as the day wanes today, we have to watch for future intensification. So again, the best thing to do when we have an active tropical cyclone, let's go to the National Hurricane Center. You can also just type in NHC and it should be the first result. We have here, this is where you need to make your official, forecast decision, or your official decisions based on the National Hurricane Center forecast. We have Isaias. We have an area of interest out here. We have Tropical Depression 10, We do not need to worry about this. It's expected to maybe reach tropical storm strength and then quickly dissipate out in the open Atlantic, so no worries there. We'll worry about this after Isaias, as Isaias is the immediate threat, but this could move up into the western Atlantic and form into some kind of tropical cyclone. But as of right now, the main threat being Isaias. Maximum sustained winds at 80 miles per hour, minimum central pressure down to 987 millibars. That has dropped a good bit today, down from the 990s, so that again is indicative of that strengthening hurricane. Moving northwest at 15 miles per hour. That is a key factor that Isaias has in terms of the hurricanes we have seen recently in the past couple of years. This is a very quick mover. It's going to continue to move quickly up the East Coast. It's not going to be very sluggish. It's not going to stick around for long. It's going to race up the coast, and it's going to be out of, it's going to approach Florida and impact Florida. Their greatest impacts will be felt tomorrow night, and then the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Mid-Atlantic by Monday, Tuesday, and then this thing is going to be out of here. So again, recall that storms in the past like Dorian came and sat over Great Abaco Island for almost 36 hours last year. So that is something that was a very rare thing. And also, I want to mention while I'm on this topic, that rapid intensification in these very large, monstrous hurricanes, they're remarkably rare. We have been very unlucky in that we've seen a lot of them in the open Atlantic over the past few years. And yes, warmer ocean waters and global climate change do play a role in supporting longer-lived hurricanes and things like that. But it is important to note that that is remarkably rare, and most hurricanes are not going to do that. With Isaias, it's forecast to possibly reach high-end Category 1 intensity, possibly low-end Category 2 intensity. It is not expected and not forecast to rapidly intensify. I saw somewhere on Twitter earlier that there is a small percentage that can happen. Of course, anything can happen with, a strengthening hurricane over warm water. But the bottom line here is that those storms that rapidly intensify, like Dorian last year, are remarkably rare. So keep that in mind, that is the exception and not the rule when it comes to these storms. You can see key messages here from the National Hurricane Center, but the main interest right here is the warning cones and the current forecast advisory. If I zoom in here for the 3-day forecast, just so we can get a little more clarity, hurricane warnings are currently posted for all of the Bahamas, the northwestern Bahamas, and the extreme northwestern Bahamas, the east coast of Florida from about Cape Canaveral down to, somewhere around Port St. Lucie or somewhere like that. Tropical storm warnings for Lake Okeechobee and down here into Miami-Dade County and Broward County. And then hurricane watches up farther up the Florida coast and tropical storm watches near Jacksonville area, just south of the Jacksonville area. And as you can see, Isaias is projected to continue as a hurricane all the way and have a very close brush, if not a landfall or interaction with the east coast of Florida as it continues to move up and approach South Carolina, where it is expected to make a secondary landfall somewhere between Charleston, South Carolina and Cape Hatteras. Where exactly that is to be determined, and likely is going to be a factor of how closely Isaias interacts with the east coast of Florida. And you can see again this timeline. This is 2 p.m. Monday, so that is just 3 days away. Well, depending on how you count your days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then extending the forecast, expected to go up the east coast here and be out of our hair by Wednesday, up all the way in Nova Scotia and Canada. So a quick moving storm, certainly good news in terms of rainfall impacts. The wind and rain are probably equivalent impacts with this storm right now. Of course, torrential rainfall is always expected with hurricanes like this, but it's not going to be a slow mover and it's not going to stick around for long. Quickly looking at the SIMS, the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological and Satellite Studies, we can look at Isaias and some diagnostics around the storm. And we can see that currently the sea surface temperature, it's in its warmest water that it will encounter over the next 24 to 36 hours. So if it's going to intensify, this is the window it has. And overlaying shear on top of that, and taking off this now, we can see that, there we go. We can see that right now it's in a marginal area for intensification due to this neutral factor of the shear, and it's moving into an area where there is relaxed shear as it gets closer to Florida, but there is a pocket of stronger shear all around here, so it's not going to be free of any shear, so it's going to have a hard time intensifying a lot, but it is expected to gradually get its act together as it approaches Florida. I'm going to stop here with going into the diagnostics just due to the length of the video in the interest of time, but the bottom line here is that the shear is marginal. The storm is likely to gradually intensify, but rapid intensification is not likely due to the presence of shear on the west northern side of the systems. And obviously, you know, it has healthy convergence and divergence. Convergence at the base of the storm, where you have warm air being pulled in, filtered up through the eye of the storm, and divergence at the top of the storm. Very healthy divergence, which you can see back in the water vapor imagery that we showed. That big plume of moisture that's coming out of the storm looks more like a hurricane, indicating a, you know, stronger storm. Two other things I want to show before the track. This is the storm surge. This is the Coastal Emergency Risk Assessment, useful website because it overlays the forecast cone on top of storm surge threats. Here is the storm currently at the July 31st. Tomorrow expected, actually very early tomorrow morning, late tonight, expected to be on Andros Island in the Bahamas, make its first landfall, then approach just east of Miami, West Palm Beach, up through east of Orlando, Cape Canaveral right here, the Treasure Coast and Space Coast of Florida. A very close brush with Florida, if not a landfall. Storm surge, you know, of course, a threat with, when you have the hurricane up in this area, you're going to have, you know, water being pushed up this way because of the circulation of the hurricane. So if you have the storm centered around that August point right here, you're going to have water being churned around in this motion underneath the storm. So everyone ahead of the storm is going to have that water pushed up against the coast. So areas that are very susceptible to storm surge need to keep an eye on the track, because that is going to pile up water against the coast. With high tides and low tides, the cycle of that, there could be some additional flooding and tidal flooding that occurs before the storm, and then some storm surge impacts as the storm continues to ride up the eastern coast. One thing I did fail to mention was that at this cutoff currently, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting Isaias to become a tropical storm by this time on August the 2nd. So this time on Sunday, it is expected to weaken into a high-end tropical storm. Do not let that catch you off guard. Tropical storms can cause just as much or, you know, more damage as a Category 1 hurricane. It all depends on, each of these storms are unique. They have their unique set of rules and intense, you know, everything is factor based. So where is it going to make landfall? You know, what time of day does it make landfall due to the tides? So you can't, you know, say that all impacts are going to be limited to something just because it's a weakened to a tropical storm. We still have to keep an eye out, and of course this forecast is likely to change as this is an evolving situation. So moving on from the storm surge threat, here is an ensemble prediction just supporting the forecast here. Usually something we don't see with tropical systems. We see remarkable agreement in the this is the EPS, I believe. Here's the GFS, that is the GFS, and then we have the European models as well that show this very close agreement with a close brush with Florida all the way up the east coast, and then impacting the Carolinas. So we're looking at 3 landfalls on Andros Island in the Bahamas, the northwestern Bahamas, maybe a landfall or a very close brush with the east coast of Florida. Again, landfall is defined when the center of the storm crosses over land, so that is, it's going to come down to a technical definition, but it's going to have impacts on the east coast of Florida. We know that at this point. It's not just going to fall apart. And then a third landfall or impact zone from South Carolina and North Carolina up through the mid-Atlantic and all the way up the eastern seaboard into Maine and into Nova Scotia as a tropical storm, or likely a strong tropical depression. Just rain and wind is likely to be, you know, the last swan song of Hurricane Isaias as it continues out to sea in the Atlantic. So that's all I really wanted to do for this video. I'm going to post some emergency management sources that may be useful for planning and things like that. Some evacuation orders have already been posted for Ocracoke Island, North Carolina, and some have, I think there may be a few very, very selective small areas in Florida that are beginning to prepare as well with some kind of evacuation depending on where you're watching this video from. But again, I'm going to post some resources with that and also the resources shown in this video. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to have another update tomorrow afternoon as Isaias approaches or is over Andros Island right here, and also as it approaches the southeastern Florida coast, and we will see what this storm has in store. So thanks for watching, stay safe, and feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.